Hi everyone, I'm Pranoti, host of Under the Microscope. This series is brought to you by the Real Scientists Nano team. Our goal is to provide a platform where scientists can communicate their work and interact with the public. With that in mind, every week we introduce you to a scientist working in the field of materials or nanoscience, who tweets from the Real Scientists Nano Twitter account, which is realsci_nano. Hi everyone, I am Pranoti, your host for the Under the Microscope series, which is produced by the Science Talk. And today we have a very, very exciting guest on our podcast. His name is Julien Barrier. I am definitely butchering the pronunciation of his name, but I hope he will forgive me for that. Julien is an EPSRC Fellow in Manchester in the UK, which is essentially Engineering and Physical Sciences Research Council to enable researchers to be independent, to be able to do some cool research. So yeah, and Julien is based in Manchester in the UK. So hi Julien, how is the weather in Manchester today?
Hi, today is exceptionally good. Thank you. Yeah, it hasn't rained for quite a long time here, which is
a miracle.
Sort of yeah, sort of miracle.
That's really good. It's not raining here in my part of Germany either, but it is quite cloudy, and I think it's going to rain in the evening. But yeah, we will see. Awesome. Let's dig into your research. So could you explain your research to us in super simple words, please?
Yes, so I'm working on a field called mesoscopic transport. So it's a branch of physics at the intersection between quantum mechanics and classical physics. So it deals with systems that are composed of a very large number of atoms, so much larger than what quantum mechanics usually does. But they are so small that some quantization phenomena appear. And we try to look at these sort of phenomena. And the best system to study this is of course graphene. So we create graphene electronic devices like transistors, and then we measure their properties against different conditions of temperatures, magnetic fields, electric bias, etc., etc. And hopefully we find some novel phenomena that couldn't be found in other sorts of devices that are larger or smaller.
Okay, all right. So this field is new for me, the mesoscopic physics and the interaction with the between the quantum mechanics and the classical physics. So could you tell me what, like, okay, two questions. First of all, is it a theoretical work or is it experimental?
So it's experimental physics.
It's experimental.
I'm making devices and then measuring them.
Okay, all right. And so when you measure these devices, what exactly are you measuring? Are you like going to low temperatures, or are you like heating? No, well, of course you won't heat up the graphene because then it will just go away. But what are you measuring? Like, are you stressing graphene and then seeing how the carbon atoms behave, or what exactly? Like, just for me to visualize it.
That's an interesting question. So we cool down the devices down to tens of millikelvin, about 10 thousandths of a degree above absolute zero. So that's very low. And then we measure electrical properties. That means we connect cables, electrical connections to the device. We send a current and measure a voltage drop or a resistance. It sounds very easy as it is, and in fact it is easy, but the interpretation of it is not always the easiest part, because the resistance can vary dramatically when you vary some parameters, some conditions, and that's understanding the changes of the resistance that is interesting.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it sounds very interesting. Yeah, you just have two electrodes and then duh. Of course it's easy, but yeah, it's way more complicated than that. And I think the cryo system is like as big as a human being, if not bigger, to keep like this tiny little micrometer range sample Cool. This
Yeah,
is
absolutely. It takes 2 square meters on the floor, plus additional space for the instrumentation, and then it's 2 meters high. So
yeah.
it's a huge system for a chip that's just, I don't know, a micron wide.
Yeah, exactly. So
It's a
what
tenth of hair.
exactly? Yeah. So are you then focusing on monolayer graphene, or is it bilayer or twisted bilayer or like doped, or can you not tell us about it?
I can definitely tell it, and I think this will be a subject of this week. Um, so we are focusing on a very broad range of materials. I have studied monolayer graphene that was encapsulated or sandwiched between other 2D materials.
Mhm.
Um, we're studying bilayer graphene, twisted bilayers, and they have a lot of different properties. They have lots of different physics that we can induce into them, and that's quite exciting.
Okay, all right. Yeah, the reason why I asked is my master thesis was about growing twisted bilayer graphene with chemical vapor deposition, and my PhD work was also on graphene. So, graphene is close to my heart. So when you said that graphene is like a non-negotiable when you're talking about research, I'm like, yep, I'm in. And listeners or watchers, we did not reach out to Julien just because he's working in graphene, okay? There is no bias. All researchers are welcome. I personally have like a bias towards graphene, but I love all the other materials. I feel like I need to explain that or like just put like a disclaimer. So I'm curious about how did you end up being the research fellow that you are right now for the Engineering and Physical Sciences Research Council? I've written this down here. How did you end up there? Tell us about your career journey, please.
Yeah, I think my career journey is a bit atypical in the sense that I didn't start in condensed matter physics originally. I started in chemical physics.
Mm-hmm.
And I studied in Paris at ESPCI Paris. That's a small institution where the teaching curriculum is atypical for the French teaching system, where load is quite heavy on the math and the theoretical physics. But in this institution, we learned hands-on physics, we learned experimental physics, and chemistry as well. So that was my mindset to approach physics, I think. At the end of this, I joined, at the end of my master's degree from ESPCI Paris, I joined the SLAC National Accelerator Laboratory for my master's project. I worked on phase transitions in metal alloys perovskite, so very far away from graphene.
Yeah.
And then in September 2018, I joined this lab in Manchester to work on graphene. So I submitted a project proposal that was very much oriented into chemical physics to my PhD supervisor. He accepted the project funding, and we started this. So I started fabricating devices and stuff on this project, trying to make basic chemical synthesis of new 2D materials. But for various reasons, it didn't work. The devices that we measured weren't really measurable in the conditions that we had. So he proposed me to drop out this part of the project and focus on electronic measurements. And that's how I ended doing condensed matter physics, which is probably the branch of physics that is the hardest to explain to the great public. And then, so at the end of my PhD, I applied for this doctoral prize fellowship from the EPSRC, the Engineering and Physical Science Research Council in the UK. And they they granted me a 1-year funding for my research. And so they give salary and they give consumables and travel funding. And they granted me this. I'm very grateful for this. And I'm staying 1 more year here in Manchester for that.
Okay, that sounds really, really cool. So are you having fun in Manchester?
Yeah, I think
With the
it's a
research,
very
I
vibrant
mean,
city.
not with
Oh.
socializing.
So Manchester is a really vibrant city, and the graphene cluster that we have here is incredible. There are 2 buildings dedicated to graphene research. There's other departments. The whole physics, condensed matter flow is mostly dedicated to graphene or other 2D materials. So we're very grateful that we have all of this with measurement abilities that are great, and I don't think there's anything equivalent for this sort of graphene research. For sure, there's nothing in the UK and in Europe. I think you can count the number of comparable labs on 5 fingers.
Yeah, absolutely. And Manchester is the birthplace of graphene, isn't it?
Absolutely. So it's been discovered here.
I mean, what better place to research graphene than the birthplace itself? So it's incredible.
Yes, yeah, so absolutely. They discovered graphene in 2004, published the first paper in 2004, and then grew. And at the same time, other groups joined into this graphene research. And I think this is quite incredible that so many people joined this and showed that making graphene was easy, was possible. A lot of people were very skeptical when the first paper came out. The fact that many other labs joined and it gave this momentum onto graphene research. And right now, there are so many groups all over the world doing this, each one having their own niche. So we're sorts of the crossroads here in Manchester of all this research, looking a bit at everything still.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like the last decade, so from 2010 to 2020, since the momentum things started picking up from 2004, and I think in 2008 that they published a paper with this ballistic transport within graphene, and I think after that it just took off. So the last decade in my mind is like the graphene decade. And now it's more like, okay, commercializing and like, okay, it's not just graphene. It has opened this giant box of Pandora with so many other 2-dimensional materials. It's incredible. So as you're sitting in the birthplace of graphene, I'm sure you're involved in a lot of interesting research projects, and you were involved also in Paris and your journey along the way. If you have to pick one research project that you're most proud of, or the most fun or quirky one, could you pick one research project and explain it to us in simple words in the section we call In Other Words?
Sure. I think the first PhD project, the first project I was involved during my PhD on graphene superlattices is quite interesting. So we combine graphene and another material that is hexagonal boron nitride. It's usually called white graphene because it has a structure that is hexagonal and resembles the structure of graphene, but it's 1.8% larger than graphene. So
and
when you combine
it's not conducting.
It's not conducting, yeah, it's insulating. So stacking it with graphene doesn't affect the electrical properties of graphene, except with one thing, that it creates periodic modulation of the electronic potential because you have a moire pattern. So people who know about fabric know about moires. It's a sort of interferences pattern when you tie different fabrics together that have a different interference pattern. They're not exactly aligned, but slightly misaligned, and then create this waving stuff. And so this combination of graphene and hexagonal boron nitride, when they're exactly aligned, creates this modulation of the potential. And what it does is that some length scales on 10 nanometers, something like this, are accessible in electronic transport. And particularly if you increase the magnetic field, what you see is that the movement of electrons can become on the same length scale as the length scale of the lattice. And this gave rise to a new family of quasar particles that we discovered. We call them the Brown-Zach fermions because we found some theorists in the 1960s that theorized some mathematical formalism for such a phenomenon, but it was completely inaccessible at the time. And they appear at Hemming Field, and I can talk about this research further on the Twitter account. I think it was quite interesting to see this, and the paper was published in 2020 in the middle of lockdown in Nature Communications. So we're quite proud of that. Yeah.
Ah, that's really cool. So, what did you call the particles? What did you call them? Fermions. But which?
So we call them Brown-Zach fermions in honor of Brown and Zach, who are two theoretical physicists of the 1960s.
That's really nice. It's an ode to the theoretical physicists. That's really nice.
Yeah, unfortunately, we have to do this. We can't name the quasi-particles after ourselves. That would be too easy.
Well, you can for yourself. I mean, no. You can call them like, okay, Brown, I forgot the other name, and also known
Exactly.
as Julien Barrier particle or something. No, I understand. But yeah, that must be really cool. And congratulations on that paper in Nature Communications. I can imagine why you picked this project as, let's say, one of the projects that you are proud of. All right. So, Julien, I definitely look forward to learning more about this on the Twitter account when you are taking over the Real Scientist Nano Twitter account, of course. So other than doing the research in the lab, what else do you like about being a scientist?
I think what drives me the most is that I'm able to be curious. I have a complete freedom on the sort of problems that I can do, the sort of questions that I'm able to answer. The only limit is, am I able to answer this question? But I can ask anybody, anyone in the community can just drop an email, and people would be very happy to have a chat. And I think this is certainly a great chance. Like, the only limit to my abilities is my curiosity. And I think this is probably something that we're the most lucky about as scientists.
Yeah, absolutely. The curiosity. Ah, that is so nice. I'm so happy always to meet scientists who say that curiosity is something that drives them and motivates them to do the science and also stay in science, like the research aspect. That's really cool. Julian, it sounds to me in the last, half an hour of knowing you, that your research experience has been quite good or quite acceptable, quite successful so far. However, if you had 3 wishes to improve your research experience, what would you ask for? And I'm not promising anything here, okay?
Yeah, I think it sounds that he's been quite smooth, but it's not always the case. We always brag about our accomplishment, the paper that we publish, etc. But there's a lot of time that we just don't find anything. We look for something, and everything that we look at has already been published, or like sometimes there's just nothing to look at. So it demands quite a lot of energy and resilience to come back, failure after failure after failure, to find something that sounds interesting, or like you see something and you see a little artifact that's not really the way it should be. You dig and dig and dig and dig and finally find something. So I think what would be better is more time. As researchers, we're always run after time. We have deadlines to submit proposals. We have deadlines to submit grant applications, to submit papers before the end of the PhD, before the end of the postdoc contract, to find a new one, etc., etc. So having a bit more rest and time to think about what we really work with. You can't find something groundbreaking in just 3 months, for example. That's not possible. You need time to think. You need time to discuss. You need ideas to come out, and this deserves quite a lot of time. And I think I'm quite lucky with this, and I have been quite lucky with this, especially here in Manchester. But still, research would be better if we let scientists think longer, if we give them longer contract, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And the second thing, I would have to improve the research experience. I think would be a situation that's not so precarious. As early career researchers, we have very short contracts. We have very precarious situations where we're always looking for the next position and stuff. And having a bit more stability, longer contracts, more stable positions would definitely help. Finally, I think lowering the administrative load would be helpful. It takes a lot of times and resources whenever I want or need to order an equipment, whenever I need to access something, especially during COVID, like traveling, filling forms and stuff that nobody will read. But anyway, I understand that in some cases there's a necessity of administrative load. You can't just purchase and spend money on random things, especially if it's not related to the research. So a minimum amount of administrative load would be necessary so that you're checked. But the universities, the institutions, they should a bit trust us with what we're doing a bit more.
Mm-hmm.
I'm lucky that I'm still a junior researcher, so this administrative load is very low for me. But still, I can't imagine how hard that will be in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you very much for sharing your wish list. So time, lesser administrative load, and longer term contracts, right? I heard a very interesting podcast yesterday when I was running. It was about the topic of this 10-year track contract or longer term contracts, and I would love to hear your thoughts about this because I found that very interesting. So the podcast featured, I think he was an astrophysicist or something in the US, in Boston, if I remember correctly. I would have to go back and check. And this professor has been with this university for like the last 35 years or 40 years, something like that. And when he was offered a 10-year contract, after the first 5 years, the committee came to him and was like, okay, dude, you're great. Here is your 10-year. And he refused to sign the 10-year contract because he said, I want the 5-year contracts so that we can come up with our goals or objectives or whatever it is that he's going to do for the next 5 years. 5 years later, the committee meets again, evaluates, and then he presents a plan for the next 5 years, and so on and so forth. So this guy, this particular professor, he rejected a 10-year track position, and that's what the podcast was about. And I got really curious about this. So his reasoning was that tenure, like from his perspective, from his experience, 10-year track positions are sought after. So the scientists want these 10-year track positions or these longer term contracts. If people are not aware of this 10-year track position term, or like a permanent contract. So the motivation for scientists to have this permanent contract is they do not want to be evaluated. They do not want to face the wrath of like producing science. And that's why he was like, yeah, but that shows that the 10-year track winners or people who have these permanent contracts, researchers who have these permanent contracts, does not mean that they are good at their job. It's just they are good at getting a permanent contract, and doing good science and being good at getting a permanent contract are two different things, which is why he did not want a 10-year track contract, like the permanent contract. And another interesting thing he mentioned is that this is what, because of this 10-year track contracts, like this attractiveness of it, the 70%, I think this would be like the US based, I'm quoting it from this podcast, 70% of the teaching staff is non-permanent contract folks. So if the system thinks that giving a professor a permanent contract will encourage them to teach more or groom the next generation of scientists, That's not what is happening. In reality, 70% of the teaching is still done by non-permanent staff, like the temporary staff. And usually, if you tell someone that, hey, I'm a professor at this XYZ university, they would assume that you are a teacher, like you're teaching, but which is not the reality because most of your time you spend on research. So, yeah, what are your thoughts about this? I'm really curious.
I think it contradicts a bit what I said, where we're looking for more less precarious situations and more long-term situations. I think on this example, maybe give people the ability, but most of the time, if you give people the ability to just do short-term contracts as they want, the institution will take more power and start thinking, okay, everyone will be on this short-term contract, and you leave no opportunity for stabilization and do something that you want. I think also that we, as researchers, we're always evaluated. Like if you need to ask for a grant, you're evaluated. If you're a professor, so here we have different systems where you are lecturer, reader, and then professor. If you want to move to the next step, you are evaluated as well. Or after certain years, you're evaluated by your institutions. So overall, there is some sort of evaluation. Maybe it's not the same thing as a 5 years research track where you're doing only one thing and then you have a very strong deadline. But still, there's some evaluation along the way. You're not here doing whatever thing you want just on your own.
Right.
Yeah, I would be happy with what we have currently with a bit more stability. I think stability is comfort, less stress that allows us to do our research however we want or how we need to do it. If you want to do something seriously, give it time, give it resources, and remove all the stress component.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with you. And I was of the same belief. I still am of the same belief as you shared, that longer term contracts or fixed, like not like this 6 months, 1 year, 2 years thing, because nothing can happen, especially experimental work. Anything can go wrong and your experiment is stalled for like 6 months. It can happen. So yeah, for me, it was really interesting. So I guess, I mean, one needs to balance, like from my point of view, I think we need to balance it out. And I think a good option would be like for early career researchers, like such as yourself, you get more of like a 10-year contract instead of like this quick contracts. And then the older you get, the shorter your contracts get because you already have a network, you already have publications and knowledge and experience and everything. So then, then you're in a position to be evaluated.
That can counterbalance.
Just to balance it out. Yeah, exactly. So earlier career researchers get 10 years, and then after that, you
5 to 1 6 months.
Exactly. Just flip it a bit. I'm pretty sure the professors and directors and the presidents of universities are going to come after me after listening to this. It's just a suggestion, guys. It's an option. We don't have to do it. It's just an idea from an outsider's perspective because I'm not in the academic system anymore, or the research system anymore actively. But yeah, Julien, this has been wonderful speaking with you. Before I let you go, I would like to understand from you, what can the followers expect in the week that you are taking over the Real Scientist Nano Twitter account?
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So what can the followers expect?
Oh, sorry. So I will explain the physics I'm dealing with. I think this is something unknown to the general public or even to the broad community of researchers. Although this field of mesoscopic physics has brought quite a large number of Nobel laureates, it's still something that people don't know about. Then I'll explain and show the sort of experiment we are doing with examples, the devices that we have on which we're studying electronic transport. I will talk a bit about the British research system because it's different from other nationalities, and I think it brings something good. The research track I'm on currently, I think, is a good system. It's not suitable for every country, but here it's quite good.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll try to explain some of the recent results in our field, our own recent results, and try to document a typical week as it goes.
Okay, that sounds like a very action-packed week, and I hope you will share lots of pictures of the lab, of the vibrant Manchester city, and also a bit about your roots in France, if that's possible. So thank you very much, Julien. It was a pleasure talking to you, and cannot wait to have you on Real Scientist Nano. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening. I also want to thank my team, Johanna, who is our news editor and curator liaison, Swenya, who is our podcast engineer and curator liaison, Lucia, who is our media and website coordinator, and myself, Pranoti, being the owner of the Science Talk and host of Under the Microscope. To know more about us, visit our website, thesciencetalk.com, and follow us on Twitter at realsci_nano.